The sun had barely crested the horizon when a loud knock jolted Sarah from her peaceful slumber. She rushed to the front door, her heart pounding, to find two burly men in HOA uniforms standing on her doorstep. "Ma'am, we've received a complaint about your fence. It needs to be taken down immediately," the taller man said, his voice stern and unyielding. Sarah's mind raced. Asterisk, the fence her father had built with his own hands over 20 years ago. The one that had stood the test of time and weathered every storm. Asterisk, but that fence has been here since I was a child. It's perfectly fine, she pleaded, her voice trembling. The men exchanged a glance. HOA rules are clear. That fence doesn't meet our specifications. You have until the end of the day to remove it, or we'll have it done for you and bill you for the cost. Sarah's stomach twisted into knots. This couldn't be happening. Please, you have to understand. That fence has so much sentimental value. My father built it with his own two hands. Tears welled in her eyes as she grasped at any shred of reason. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but the decision has been made. If you don't comply, we'll have no choice but to take further action." The men turned and walked back to their truck, leaving Sarah standing in the doorway, her heart sinking. She hurried to the backyard, running her fingers along the weathered wooden planks, memories flooding her mind. Her father's calloused hands, the sound of his hammer, the pride in his eyes as he surveyed his handiwork. This fence wasn't just a structure, it was a testament to his love and devotion. Asterisk, how could the HOA do this? Didn't they understand what this fence meant to her? Asterisk, Sarah's hands trembled as she realized she had no choice. With a heavy heart, she began to gather the tools, determined to preserve what she could of her father's legacy. As Sarah dismantled the fence panel by panel, a wave of emotions threatened to overwhelm her. Each plank she pried loose felt like a part of her was being torn away. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the sweat of her brow as she worked tirelessly against the clock. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out from the back gate. "Sarah, what in the world are you doing?" Her neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, had been a lifelong friend and confidant. Sarah's voice caught in her throat as she tried to explain the situation. "The HOA, they're making me take down the fence. They say it doesn't meet their standards." Mrs. Wilson's eyes widened in disbelief. "But that fence has been here as long as I can remember. It's perfectly sturdy and well-maintained." She placed a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Let me talk to them. Surely they can understand the sentimental value of this fence." Without hesitation, Mrs. Wilson marched towards the front of the house, where the two HOA representatives were still parked, observing the proceedings. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Mrs. Wilson said, her voice firm. "I understand you're requiring Sarah to take down her fence, but I can assure you it's in excellent condition. That fence was built by her father, and it holds great meaning for her and the entire neighborhood." The taller of the two men shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the rules are clear. That fence doesn't meet our specifications, and it has to go. We've already given Sarah until the end of the day to remove it." Mrs. Wilson's brow furrowed in frustration. "But surely you can make an exception in this case. It's not causing any harm, and it's been a part of this community for decades." The shorter man crossed his arms, his expression unyielding. "I'm afraid there are no exceptions. The decision has been made, and we'll have to proceed with removal if Sarah doesn't comply." As Mrs. Wilson returned to the backyard, her face fell. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. They're not budging. They're adamant that the fence has to come down." Sarah's heart sank. She had hoped Mrs. Wilson's intervention would make a difference, but it seemed the HOA was unwilling to show any compassion. With a heavy heart, she resumed her task, fighting back the tears that threatened to overwhelm her. As the sun began to set, Sarah's hands were raw and blistered from the relentless work of dismantling her father's fence. Each plank she removed felt like a betrayal, a severing of the connection to her family's history. Exhausted, she paused to survey the growing pile of lumber in her backyard. The fence that had once stood tall and proud now lay in scattered pieces, a testament to the HOA's unyielding demands. Suddenly, a familiar rumble caught her attention. Her husband, Michael, had just pulled into the driveway, his face etched with concern. "Sarah, what's going on?" "The neighbors told me the HOA is making you take down the fence." He hurried to her side, his eyes filled with disbelief. Sarah nodded, her voice heavy with emotion. "Yes, they say it doesn't meet their standards, and they're giving me no choice. I've been working all day to take it down." Michael's brow furrowed in anger. "But that fence has been here since we moved in. It's perfectly fine. How can they do this?" He placed a comforting arm around his wife's shoulders, pulling her close. "I tried to reason with them, and even Mrs. Wilson went to speak with them, but they won't budge. They said there are no exceptions, and if I don't remove it, they'll do it for me and bill me for the cost." Sarah's voice trembled as she spoke. Michael's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to let them bully you like this. We're going to fight this, Sarah. I won't let them take away something that means so much to you and your family." Without hesitation, Michael strode towards the front of the house, determination etched on his face. Sarah watched anxiously as he confronted the two HOA representatives, his voice rising with each passing moment. From the backyard, Sarah could hear the heated exchange, punctuated by the occasional raised voice. She held her breath, praying that Michael's intervention would make a difference. After what felt like an eternity, Michael returned, his expression a mix of frustration and resolve. "They won't budge, Sarah. They say the decision is final, and they're giving us until tomorrow to have the fence completely removed." Sarah's heart sank, and she felt the weight of defeat settling upon her shoulders. The fence that had been a constant presence in her life, a tangible link to her father's memory, was about to be taken away, no matter how hard she tried to save it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the backyard, Sarah and Michael sat on the porch, their eyes fixed on the partially dismantled fence. The silence between them was heavy, punctuated only by the occasional sigh. "I can't believe they're doing this to us," Michael finally said, his voice tinged with anger. "That fence has been here for decades, and it's in perfect condition. How can the HOA just swoop in and demand that we tear it down?" Sarah nodded, her gaze downcast. "It's not just the fence, Michael. It's a part of my family's history. My father poured his heart and soul into building that, and now it's all going to be gone." Michael reached out and squeezed her hand, his thumb gently caressing her knuckles. "I know, sweetheart. I know how much this means to you, but I promise we're not going to let them win. We're going to fight this, tooth and nail." Sarah looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "How? The HOA has made it clear that they won't back down. They're practically holding us hostage, forcing us to destroy something that's so precious to us. We'll find a way, Sarah. I'm not going to let them bully us into submission. We'll research the rules, we'll reach out to other homeowners, we'll do whatever it takes to save that fence." Michael's voice was filled with determination, his grip on her hand tightening. Sarah nodded, a glimmer of hope flickering in her heart. "Okay, let's do it. Let's fight this, for my father's sake. I can't bear the thought of that fence being gone forever." As the last rays of sunlight faded, Sarah and Michael stood, their resolve renewed. They knew the battle ahead would be difficult, but they were determined to save the fence that had stood as a testament to their family's history for so many years. The following morning, Sarah and Michael woke with a renewed sense of purpose. They had spent the entire night researching HOA bylaws and reaching out to neighbors, determined to find a way to save the fence. As they stepped outside, they were greeted by a familiar sight. The two HOA representatives were already waiting in their truck, their eyes fixed on the partially dismantled fence. "Ma'am, sir, we're here to ensure the fence is removed by the end of the day as per our instructions," the taller man said, his voice stern. Michael stepped forward, his shoulders squared. We've done some research, and we believe there are provisions in the HOA bylaws that allow for exceptions to be made in cases of historical or sentimental significance. The shorter man scoffed. That's not how it works. The fence doesn't meet our specifications, and the decision has been made. You have until the end of the day to remove it, or we'll do it for you and bill you for the cost. Sarah's heart raced as she watched the exchange, her mind racing to find a solution. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Wait, what if we get the entire neighborhood to sign a petition supporting the fence? Surely that would show you that it has historical value and the community's approval. The taller man shook his head. I'm sorry, but that's not how it works. The HOA board has made their decision, and there's no room for negotiation. Michael's brow furrowed in frustration. This is ridiculous. You're telling us that the will of the entire community means nothing. That you're willing to destroy a piece of our history just because it doesn't fit your arbitrary standards. The shorter man held up his hand. Look, we're just following the rules here. If you have a problem with it, you're welcome to take it up with the HOA board. But in the meantime, that fence has to go. As the two men turned and headed back to their truck, Sarah and Michael stood in stunned silence, their hopes of saving the fence crumbling around them. What are we going to do, Michael? Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. That fence means everything to me, and they're just going to take it away. Michael pulled her into a tight embrace, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears. I don't know, Sarah. But I promised you we're not going to give up without a fight. We'll find a way to save that fence, no matter what it takes. As the day wore on, Sarah and Michael continued their efforts to save the fence, enlisting the help of their neighbors and reaching out to the HOA board. But their pleas and petitions fell on deaf ears as the HOA representatives remained steadfast in their decision. Frustrated and exhausted, Sarah stood in the backyard, her gaze fixed on the partially dismantled fence. The once proud structure now lay in a heap, a shadow of its former self. She couldn't bear the thought of losing this connection to her father's memory. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Rushing to the garage, she emerged with a can of paint and a brush. With a renewed sense of determination, she began carefully painting over the exposed wood, transforming the dismantled panels into a vibrant, colorful display. As Michael watched, his brow furrowed in confusion. Sarah, what are you doing? I'm not going to let them take this away from me, Michael, she replied, her voice steady. If they insist on removing the fence, then they'll have to do it with my art as the backdrop. Realization dawned on Michael's face, and he nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. I see. Let's give them something to think about. Together, they worked tirelessly, transforming the scattered fence panels into a vibrant, abstract mural. Bursts of color and bold brushstrokes danced across the weathered wood, creating a stunning visual display. As the HOA representatives arrived later that day, their eyes widened in surprise at the unexpected sight. The once nondescript fence had been transformed into a work of art, a testament to Sarah's determination and her refusal to let her family's legacy be erased. The taller man cleared his throat, his brow furrowed in confusion. Ma'am, sir, what is the meaning of this? Sarah stepped forward, her chin held high. This is my way of honoring my father's memory and the history of this fence. If you insist on taking it down, then you'll have to do so with my art as the backdrop. The shorter man exchanged a glance with his colleague, their expressions uncertain. We'll need to consult the HOA board on this, he said, his voice hesitant. As the two men retreated to their truck, Sarah and Michael exchanged a triumphant look. They had found a way to stand their ground, to preserve the memory of the fence and the love that had gone into its creation. In the days that followed, the HOA representatives returned, their expressions uncertain as they surveyed the colorful, vibrant fence panels. Ma'am, sir, the HOA board has reviewed your case, and they're willing to make an exception, the taller man said, his voice slightly reluctant. Sarah felt her heart swell with relief, and she gripped Michael's hand tightly. "You mean we can keep the fence?" The shorter man nodded. "Yes, but on one condition. The fence must remain in its current, painted state. The HOA has determined that your artwork has transformed it into a unique and aesthetically pleasing feature of the neighborhood." Sarah couldn't believe her ears. She had expected a fight, a drawn-out battle, but instead, the HOA had capitulated. Thank you so much," she said, tears of joy welling in her eyes. As the HOA representatives left, Sarah and Michael embraced, their laughter and relief filling the air. The once threatened fence had been saved, transformed into a vibrant, one-of-a-kind work of art that would stand as a testament to their family's history and their refusal to back down. In the days that followed, the neighbors gathered around the painted fence, marveling at the vibrant colors and the story behind it. Sarah's father's legacy had been preserved, not just in the physical structure, but in the spirit of the community that had rallied to protect it. As Sarah gazed upon the fence, now a canvas for her own creative expression, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had fought against the HOA's demands, and in the end, she had won, not just for herself, but for her family and the entire neighborhood. The once threatened fence had become a symbol of resilience, a reminder that sometimes standing up for what's right can lead to unexpected and beautiful outcomes. Sarah knew that every time she looked at the fence, she would be reminded of her father's legacy and the power of determination in the face of adversity. In the weeks that followed, the painted fence became a source of community pride and a canvas for Sarah's continued artistic expression. Neighbors would often gather around it, marveling at the vibrant colors and the story behind its transformation. Sarah found solace in the act of painting, pouring her heart and soul into each brushstroke. It was as if the fence had become a bridge between her father's memory and her own creative spirit, a tangible way to honor his legacy. One day, as Sarah was adding a new layer of paint to the fence, she noticed a familiar figure approaching. It was Mrs. Wilson, her face beaming with a warm smile. "Sarah, the fence looks absolutely stunning. You've truly turned it into a work of art," she said, her eyes brimming with admiration. Sarah felt a sense of pride swell within her. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. It means so much to me to be able to preserve this piece of my family's history." Mrs. Wilson nodded in understanding. "I can see that, and I'm so glad the HOA was willing to make an exception. It just goes to show that sometimes standing up for what's right can lead to unexpected and beautiful outcomes." Sarah smiled, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns she had painted onto the weathered wood. "That's exactly what I've learned through this whole experience. It wasn't easy, but in the end, it was worth it to save something that holds so much meaning for me and my family." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the vibrant fence, Sarah knew that her father's legacy would live on. The fence had become a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of determination and the enduring strength of family. In that moment, Sarah felt closer to her father than ever before, his spirit alive and thriving in the beauty of the painted fence. It was a reminder that sometimes the things we fight the hardest to preserve are the ones that end up leaving the most lasting impact.